What are some of the things that you should be watching for as a website owner or an agency partner, like for your clients' websites? Like, what are the things you should be looking at that say, hey, there might be something hidden under the surface here that's a bigger problem than what we're being presented with?
Welcome, everybody, to another A2 hosting show webinar. I've got a friend of mine, a WordPress expert, Ryan Sullivan, today. I'll share in just a minute what he's going to be talking about. But my name is Corey Miller. I am the lead. I lead, our A2 agency growth program. It's just kind of getting on the started, and I'm leading that effort. But the mantra there is you grow and we grow. You win, we win. We are focused on agencies and agency owners, and we bring experts and ask experts like Brian to come on to share some helpful, insightful information for you. But we're your ears and your eyes directly to and for our A2 support, product, and leadership teams. So the things you tell me, I translate for our team to iterate and ship for you, our awesome agency owners. And we've got a great one today, by the way. Ryan Sullivan, we go way back. I know you, Ryan, as one of the innovators in our space. You were just telling me some of the backstory to that, being a database administrator. I'll let Ryan tell a little bit more about his story, but I know like you'll hear it in his voice and how he shares things, technical minded and focused on site health. Site Care is the company he founded and now is the chief of staff, sitecare.com. And we were talking a couple months ago. I was like, Ryan, I love what you're doing with WordPress Site Health. He's got a plugin he may mention at some point and some tools, loaded presentation today. I was like, can you come on to the A2 show and share this expertise with our agency owners? So Ryan, thanks for being here today. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? And then I'm going to turn the controls over to you. One quick thing before I let Ryan talk is there's a Q&A button at the bottom of the Zoom link. That's for you. If you have questions, I'm watching for Ryan. We have some space at the end to answer those questions. So get ready. If you're like me, I've got my notes ready to take notes for what you're going to be talking about today, Ryan.
Very good. Appreciate the kind intro, Corey. Happy to be here. Like Corey was saying, um, I started a company 12 years ago called WP Site Care. It was acquired by a company called Southern Web, and we've since re kind of readopted the brand of Site Care and did that a couple of years ago. So the my evolution or my kind of like introductory or origin story for WordPress is when I worked as a database administrator for a large hospital network. So things like privacy and security and redundancy and a lot of these things that we think about when we think about protecting our websites were very much top of mind for me in that career. The problem was I worked with Windows servers every day, which for anybody who's ever had to live in that world, it is not a fun place to be. So I was looking for something else and was looking at a lot of different open source software and was looking at ways to kind of just at first it was very much a hobbyist type of approach, right? Like, hey, I want to build a website. What's the easiest way to do that? And I found WordPress and this was about 15 years ago. So WordPress was still new, but I was able to do a lot of things that I wanted to be able to do with a website. And I was able to do them relatively easy. Like I liked the feeling of control, right? Like I had the ability to do things that or customize things in a way that I wasn't seeing with a lot of other platforms. So I got comfortable with it, and I started to build websites for other people. You know, somebody said, "Hey, we own a dog washing company, and we want to have a website so people can come and sign up for our service." And I would build that, and eight or ten of these moonlighting types of projects. And what I started to notice was anybody who I ever built a website for would be coming back later and saying, "Hey, can you fix this thing?" Or, "Hey, my website got hacked," or I want to add a feature to the site that I didn't think I would need and that I want now." And this kind of repeat pattern of people coming back over and over again brought this idea to my head that, hey, maybe we can turn this into a business if we turn this into like a subscription proactive management type of thing. And so I set that up, started, selling maintenance services to people for, I don't know, at the time it was probably 39 or 49 bucks a month, and built a big enough subscriber base to, replace my full-time income and start to hire people. And so that's kind of like that's how I got into WordPress. But ever since then, I've become really passionate about this idea of proactive management, raising awareness, identifying issues before they become big problems. Because nothing is worse than, waking up on a Saturday morning and finding out that, you're out at the park with your kids, and you find out that your website's been defaced and your business's reputation is being damaged, and you're there completely helpless, right? That's the type of thing I want website owners to be able to spot check and identify and plan for, so that they don't end up with that worst case scenario. And so that's what I'm going to be going over today. It's this idea of what's called site health. And site health is this idea. I mean, compare it to mental health, physical health, whatever, whatever what you have there. It's this idea of identifying patterns or trends, or having key indicators that say, "Hey, the health of my website is bad, bad or good." And that's what we're going to go over today. We're going to look at what are some of those key indicators. What are some of the things that you should be watching for as a website owner or an agency partner, like for your clients' websites? Like, what are the things you should be looking at that say, hey, there might be something hidden under the surface here that's a bigger problem than what we're being presented with. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. We've got some slides to go through. Yeah, so we're going to go through measuring and improving WordPress site health. I'm going to give you some practical tools and strategies to optimize your site's performance, security, and user experience. And those some of the key things we're going to talk through are, first of all, why site health matters, and what are kind of the key and core areas of site health that come into play. So if you think, taking this analogy of like website health and physical health, if you think of regular checkups, like, you're supposed to go see the doctor every year, compare that to a site audit or ongoing monitoring. Like there are pieces that are analogous to WordPress website management. How about eating a healthy diet? I would compare that to having quality content, clean code, like using quality plugins and themes and things that way. Exercise. So we're all supposed to exercise. What does that look like? That's optimizing our website performance and making sure that, things stay in tip-top tape shape from a performance standpoint. And then we can talk about the immune system, the thing we have in our body that keeps the bad parts out. Well, that's security. That's security measures and things like firewalls and pieces that way. Those are things that are, yeah, those are the technologies we have available to keep the bad stuff out. Sleep and recovery. So that's backups, that's maintenance, that's what's happening behind the scenes to prevent the burnout or the bad things from happening on the website side of things. And then mental health, that's user experience, that's accessibility. So you can see there's like all of these real life parallels between taking care of our bodies and taking care of our websites. And that's what we're going to get into in more detail today. So the first thing I want to show you is a tool called the WordPress Site Health tool. This is built into core WordPress. This doesn't, this isn't a special plugin. Doesn't require anything extra out of the box to work. But it's really powerful and has some great insights. So we're going to go over. I'm going to share a different window here, and we're going to go over some of those things here. So in my WordPress dashboard here, if I go to tools and then site health, again, you'll see this option on every single WordPress installation. If you don't see it, something is very broken with your website, because this is a core WordPress feature. So we're going to go to site health, and there's a few key areas I wanna point out here in the site health menu. So we have this status page that shows, it says, hey, your health should be improved. There's a status page and it highlights the types of issues. There's critical issues, there's recommended improvements, and then you can also look and see, tests that your website has passed. Now, an area that I see a lot of people overlook is this info area. This section can be very helpful in diagnosing lots of issues and also kind of getting to the bottom of what what the makeup of your website actually is. So, there's a section for WordPress. It'll talk through the the time zone you have set, the WordPress version you're running, is the site using HTTPS? Um, some of the other things like, is it a multi-site? Can anyone register? These are kind of like high level, is the site discouraging search engines? If the answer to that is yes, and you want to be f found in search engines, that's a potential issue. So, so there's just kind of like a very quick overview of the WordPress level. But then you can see things like directories and sizes. This is where hosting comes into play a lot of the time. Maybe you get an email from your web host that says, hey, you've met your disk quota. You need to upgrade. You need to buy additional storage. And you go, there's no way my website is using that much storage. How could it be using that much storage? Well, this panel will show you what will show you, right? It'll say, hey, WordPress is using 130 megs. Your uploads directory is probably bigger than 4 kilobytes. This is just a local site I have. But if you see your uploads directory is 4 gigabytes and you have 3 gigs of storage available, that's your flag. And this will break it down into theme directory, plugin directory, fonts, and then your database, and you'll get a total installation size. So if you see this size is bigger than the allowance that your host is giving you, that's an indication that you need to either delete some files or increase your storage, whatever the case may be. This will also show what the active theme for the website is, theme authors, what the different features are, but it'll also show inactive themes. So one thing I always tell website owners to look for is how many inactive themes they have. If you come to this panel and you see inactive themes 12, that means that you have 11 themes that are basically being unused that are potential attack vectors for your WordPress website. So it's best to always keep the number of themes as thin as you can. You want to keep, you really only want to have one alternate theme that you can use for troubleshooting and testing outside of your active theme. The one caveat to that is in child theme situations, you will see one theme that's listed as inactive um, that's needed for the site to work. And then, so I don't know, point being, you could have as many as two here and still have it be okay. If you look at this and you see 10, it's a clue that you should probably be cleaning things up and getting rid of some themes. Must use plugins. This one's been interesting lately because lots of hosting platforms are, excuse me, lots of hosting platforms are adding their own plugins to the WordPress stack to add different features to improve reliability, to improve performance and things that way. So if you see things like, for strong passwords, that is a plugin that you're not going to see when you look at your list of installed plugins. It's going to be invisible there, but it could be impacting or adding behavior to your website that you need to be aware of and know how it works. And then you have your list of active plugins, everything that is there, any inactive plugins, and and then a lot of server details. So these are things like what image file formats are available on my server. The server will also say like server limits, right? So if you have a really intensive process that runs on your website, think of something like subscription management for your e-commerce site or exporting data from the website. Those are things that use up a good number of resources. And if you hit some kind of memory limit error, this can be your clue as to why that might be happening. If you get a memory exhausted error on your website, you can see, oh, well, I have 256 megabytes, allocated for this, and I really, maybe I need more than that, with whatever my process is. This is your clue that'll show you kind of where some of those issues might be living. Another thing is this, right? HT access rules. For any of you that are familiar with HT access, this is a set of rules that lives within the word. Like, it can do a whole bunch of different things. It can add restrictions, it can add redirects, it can add a number of different things. But if you're trying to identify an issue on your website that feels like you're like, this doesn't seem like it's connected to WordPress, well, there's a clue right here in the site panel that says there are custom rules added to this htaccess file. So that could be there's a file in the root of your website that is causing some unintended behavior, and it's something you could look into further. And you get all of that information in this one dashboard, right? All of these diagnostic pieces. Again, the database, this is saying, here's the table prefix for your database. For anybody who's ever tried to do a website migration, sometimes if there's a custom table prefix being used, that can cause some confusion or issues when you're moving databases. And this will tell you exactly what the table prefix should be. It'll also show things like file system permissions. So WordPress needs to be able to write certain files to be able to handle, specific things like I need to upload a file to I need to upload a file through my media library, or I need to install a plugin, or I need to install a theme. WordPress needs to be able to write files at the web server level for that to work. So you want to see, hey, if you would find that some of these are not writable, that could be an indication of, hey, I was trying that could be a blocker for being able to upload files, or a number of other things that WordPress relies on at the file system level. So I just wanted to, quickly kind of scan through and point out the info tab. If you're working with an agency or a plugin provider or a theme provider to try and debug or troubleshoot some type of issue, come over here to the info area, click copy site info to clipboard, and send them the whole thing. Like, that will copy all of the contents of this entire thing. And I can't tell you how many support interactions are, there's lots of ping pong, like back and forth. Well, can you give us this piece of information? Can you give us that piece of information? And that can be that can be a frustrating experience as you go through that. But if you give, an engineer or a developer all of this information at once when they're trying to resolve an issue for you, that's going to give them most of what they could possibly need to be able to solve the issue. So that's a good place to start. Like, in fact, yeah, it's a good place to start. If you need assistance from somebody and you say, "Hey, I need you to help me solve this issue," copy all of it to the clipboard, send them everything, and that will give them a really good place to start and understand the issue. Now, going to the status page, there's a couple of things that um, I wanted to show here, and then we'll move on with the rest of the presentation. So, like I said, it's kind of, this breaks things down into critical, recommended. You'll see that some of the issues are, other plugins have the ability to add um, their own checks to WordPress Site Health. So WordPress Site Health is actually an API that other plugins can say, they can add um, their own checks to, that are outside of WordPress's built-in functions. This is an example. So this is saying, a scheduled event is late. So this is saying the scheduled event, action scheduler run queue, is late to run. Your site still works, but this may indicate that scheduling posts or automated updates may not work as intended. Now, for anybody that's familiar, this scheduled event, action scheduler run queue, this is actually this is the name of the processing event for WooCommerce subscriptions. So on the surface, Site Health is saying, hey, this is a recommended improvement. A scheduled event is late. But in reality, the business problem that's happening here is my customer subscriptions for my service are not renewing. That's a problem, right? Like that's like I'm not capturing subscription payments in a way that I should. So even though this isn't characterized as a critical issue, when it comes to your business, this is a critical issue. So if you need help like interpreting any of these, because again, the language here is a little bit innocuous. It's a little bit like it's a little bit hard to parse. If this doesn't mean anything to you, that doesn't mean just because it's in a recommended improvement schedule, improvements area, that it's something to just dismiss or ignore. Because this would cause some heartache on the business side of things. So, this is the type of stuff, if you don't understand exactly what it means, definitely recommend, reviewing it with a developer, or I'm happy to answer any of these questions on Twitter as well. So, definitely something to not just dismiss because it lands in the improvements area. All right, good there. All right, let's go back to the presentation here. So again, just quick brief overview of how to access the tool. We went over that. We talked a little bit about this at the end, understanding the difference between critical issues and recommendations and prioritizing accordingly. And then regular checks. This is the type of thing that you really like. I really recommend checking at least monthly. If you have a somewhat complex website that's critical to your business, I would be reviewing the Site Health tool every week, because like it can identify issues that are, yeah, it can identify issues that um, come up during routine WordPress updates, or again, things like, hey, subscriptions aren't renewing, or things like that. It's the kind of stuff you don't want to find out about, a month after it's already a problem. So. All right, so common hidden issues, database issues, PHP version issues, file ownership, and disk space. These are ones that we see almost every single day at SiteCare. Yeah, these are things we see almost every single day at SiteCare. The most modern hosts don't, when it comes to disk space, most modern hosts monitor it, but don't have a kind of like set threshold. So if you look at, if you go back to that site health area we were looking at before, and you look at disk storage, and it doesn't say, the server doesn't say it has 10 gigabytes available, you'll have to contact your host to find out what your actual plan allowance is. Just because the way, like behind the scenes, the way they manage that disk piece is a little bit different, and it's not hardware all the time anymore. So, um, PHP versions is one I want to talk about, because it's probably the most common one we encounter. And the reason we encounter it is because there's a lot of friction in upgrading PHP versions, especially with WordPress. And what I mean by that is, um, it's very common to not upgrade your PHP version because it can break things on your WordPress site. And so people try, their host performs an upgrade, the website breaks, and they say, no, no, roll it back. And that's kind of where the progression stops. They don't take the next steps to find out which plugin is incompatible, how the theme is incompatible, because that's work and additional cost. But the thing to understand about PHP versions is, actually, I think yeah, the thing to understand about PHP versions is it has a very clear life cycle um, of what they call, yeah, it has a very clear life cycle. So, for example, this is the chart from, there's a link in my notes here, but this is the chart from php.net for their supported versions. And you can see, like right now, uh, this version 8.1 is actually, by the end of next year, isn't going to have any more security support. A lot of the sites we see are running version 7.4 or 8.0. Some are even older than that if they come to us and they haven't been attended to in a long time. So check your PHP version and make sure that as of right now, you're at least on version 8.2 because anything early, well, like I said, you have security support until the end of next year if you're on 8.1, but you're already kind of like if you're on any of these other versions, your PHP version no longer receives security support. And the point being, it's worth the friction of figuring out which plugin is causing the issue, which theme is causing the issue, all of those things. Even if you have to hire somebody, get that work done and get your site compatible because otherwise you're running on an insecure platform and it's opening your business to lots of unnecessary risk. All right. So the next thing I want to talk about is what I'm going to call software updates. But this is WordPress core updates, theme updates. We just had a WordPress core update last night. Well, for people in the US, it happened just last night. So WordPress 6.7 just landed. And that's really from a WordPress application standpoint, that is your best layer of defense. Your best layer of defense is keeping plugins and themes and WordPress core up to date, because those updates, have lots of security. Yeah, they have the built-in security patches. But one thing that often comes up is what happens if there is a security vulnerability, but my author hasn't released a patch for it yet, right? Or another problem is, hey, we don't know if this plugin or this theme is secure, but we also don't have, but the author doesn't seem to be active. We don't know if it's a problem. It may or may not be secure, but the author kind of seems to have abandoned it in some way. I don't know if anybody's ever run into that, but we see it all the time. That's one of the things that the Site Health tool won't check for, but it is something that we have integrated into a tool we built. It's a free plugin on WordPress.org called the Site Care Score. What the Site Care Score does, it uses that Site Health API to check for a number of things. But what it does is it gives you a score of each of the items on your site and of each of the items on your site and gives you a score out of 100. And then it actually tracks that score over time. So if I look at my score history, once I have a number of scans done here, it starts to chart the health of my score over time. And one of the things we do check for, getting back to my original point, one of the things we do check for is abandoned themes and plugins. So, for example, the it's telling me here the abandoned active plugins. I have a couple of plugins here that are that our algorithm is saying are potentially abandoned. Well, this is one of those cases where doing a little extra homework is going to do you well. So let's take a look quickly at this public post preview plugin, for example. So if we pull up the page on WordPress.org, why is our algorithm saying it's been abandoned? Well, it hasn't been updated in a year, and the plugin hasn't been tested with the last three major versions of WordPress. So that's why it's being flagged. But this probably still isn't abandoned, and I'll show you a little bit why. So the reason, one, we still see 100,000 active installations. Um, But the other thing is, if you look at the author's profile, this is somebody who contributes regularly to WordPress core, and you can see that they have a lot of so you can see that it's somebody that's regularly watching things. Yes, they should release an update to this plugin that says it's compatible and tested with the latest version, but you can also see. Um, there are some questions here. Like there are some questions here in the support form that say, is it still supported? Um, some things like that. And this question is coming because it's flagged because it hasn't released an update for so long. But it also there is an actual, as of within the last week or last couple of weeks, there is an actual abandoned status for plugins that are formally no longer supported, which will be a great thing for site owners so they can see like, hey, this is formally abandoned and I need to find a replacement for it. But those are some of the things you can look at the plugin level to identify that are hints beyond, has this been tested? Um, that are hints beyond whether or not it's something that you should be spending that is going to be supported. Now, I will say a pattern like this is something that doesn't build my confidence in a plugin, right? Even though it probably isn't abandoned, if I can find something that has more activity behind it and that does has the same functionality and is well put together and does look like it's more actively supported, that's something I would look into and want to find more of. All right, let's move on to uh, user accounts. This is a big one for site owners. So it's super common. I can't Almost every single website that we onboard onto our services at SiteCare, if we look at the number of administrative users on the website, it's always five or more. And if you're talking about administrative rights for WordPress, that is somebody who can change literally anything on your website. They can effectively delete the entire website with their user privileges. And so it's super important to understand who it is that you're granting administrative rights to. We even there's certain for the activities we perform, we need administrative rights on clients' websites, but the thing that we really like to do is create custom roles. So you can give people all the permissions they need to do their job without giving them full control over the entire website. And I linked to some resources that, tells you how to create some custom roles, and even the built-in roles to WordPress are pretty solid for making sure people have enough permissions to do their work. One example, like, so some plugins add their own custom permissions too. Like one example is Yoast SEO. If you've ever used that plugin, it adds a SEO contributor and SEO manager role to the plugin to the website so that people can not only so that they can manage the SEO settings without having the ability to change themes and change plugins and things like that. So if you're going to do one thing today out of this webinar, go review the list of accounts in your users area in WordPress and see how many people you have administrative rights and take them away. Like 1 to 2 administrators on a WordPress website is really all that needs to be there. We don't need to get into um, I want to spend some time talking about site performance. So site performance has been another huge push for us at SiteCare specifically over the last year and a half, maybe 2 years. Since Google introduced Core Web Vitals, it's user experience measurement, right? So there's a big performance component of it, and there's also a big usability component of it. That's something we've been very invested in and really wanted to solve for WordPress without getting too deep into the nitty-gritty of Core Web Vitals. It's an area that it just it genuinely makes the web better overall when sites are scoring good in Core Web Vitals. And it does we've seen a direct correlation between sites that have good Core Web Vitals versus poor Core Web Vitals, and how they perform in search engines. So we work with a lot of large scale publishers who, organic search engine traffic is a huge driver for them. And the sites that measure good for core web vitals you know, almost always have better performance than their competitors who don't. And site performance is one of those things where I wanted to show you a few tools that could be useful to you for site performance. But one is the Page Speed Insights tool. So the Page Speed Insights tool is a good tool for a quick diagnostic. It'll tell you, hey, here are some of the things that are keeping you from having good performance on your website, and then it has some suggestions built in as well. So you can find that at PageSpeed. I can't remember, but just Google page speed, it'll come up. The other tool that is really useful is a tool called CruxViz. Now, if you're not familiar with Core Web Vitals, this might seem a little bit tough to follow, but um, let me find an example here. So this is actually a funny example. Um, of this tool called CruxViz. So what this tool is doing is this is taking Core Web Vitals data that Google is gathering from real users, and it's compiling it into a visual chart that shows you how the progression of Core Web Vitals for a website is performing. So what we see here when I put in this URL is we see the visual stability of this website is good and stable. The interactivity needs improvement but is regressing, and the loading performance needs improvement but is regressing. But this tool, cruxviz.withgoogle.com, is really valuable to just kind of give you a baseline for how the site is performing over time. Now, why I said this was funny is this site that I tested is google.com. So they're not doing great when it comes to their own metric. They've got some work to do. So don't feel bad if your site is not performing well for Core Web Vitals. It's a very common issue that we've spent a lot of time building services around to really improve it. And I know things like Turbo Hub in the A2 hosting panel also have some built-in performance features that will help improve your Core Web Vitals as well. But don't feel bad about it, but you can use this tool to kind of understand how your site has been performing for Core Web Vitals over time. And it's a tool that's built by the Google team. So it's really useful. And I really like how it breaks it down into a very simple way of, hey, the site needs improvement and is regressing. It says your metrics are getting worse over time. And it kind of clues you into, how you're doing. So yeah, so I wanted to make sure I pointed out that tool along with the pagespeed.web.dev. Those two tools are really useful for diagnosing and understanding how your site is working from a performance standpoint. Performance and usability, I should say. Um, yeah, so what I would recommend, just again, kind of going forward to from today is uh have some conversations about what you want your maintenance schedule to look like. Conduct a site audit. When I say that doesn't have to be a big comprehensive thing. Look at your site, you look at your WordPress site health in the site health tool. Look at the CruxViz tool I just shared. Look at pagespeed.web.dev and look, take how do things look at a very high level? Get an understanding of, hey, if you're green checks across the board, pat yourself on the back and go on with the rest of your day. You know, but my hunch is that that's not going to be the case for most people. But just run your site through a few of those testing tools to get an understanding of how you measure up and where things are at. And then from there you can decide, hey, one, our website is business critical. We can't have issues happening with it. So we need to be checking this every single week. And here are some of the proactive activities we need to put in place going forward to make sure that we don't have we don't have additional issues. Security measures, one of the thing, like one of the, again, the same way, review your list of users. take away admin rights unless they're absolutely necessary. Adding two-factor authentication to your WordPress website is a really quick and easy way to drastically improve the security of your site. And then work on once you have kind of the baseline pieces in place, then you can work on the optimization. Then you can work on the improvements and improving speed and usability and accessibility and all of those types of things once you have that solid foundation. So and again, like use the tools you have available. I mentioned SiteCare Score. That's a free plugin download you can install on any WordPress website, regardless of where you host. And A2 has some really cool tools in their Turbo Hub to improve performance, improve security, issue spot in a similar way. So if you are an A2 customer and you have access to their Turbo Hub tool, take a look at that because it has some really great it does a really good job of identifying issues and bubbling up some of these, raising awareness on some of these things that could be challenges for you or could be, hidden killers really in the future. So that is my time, and I'm happy to answer, stick around and answer questions anybody has.
Thanks, Ryan. Great webinar. Awesome. Great base. I took a bunch of notes. The fact that showing the site health tab, which by the way, if you're in your WordPress admin is under tools and then site health, and you can click that copy to clip, copy to clipboard to send to your, if you happen to be managed by an agency or you're hosting, you can copy that information there. So appreciate you doing that. Everybody be sure and say thanks to Ryan for sharing this. Known him for a long time, asked him to do this because he's an expert on these things. So some big takeaways. But I want to ask you, what are you excited about what you're doing in WordPress and with SiteCare?
Yeah, so I mentioned two of the things briefly, but SiteCare Score is something like we're starting to we've created this with SiteCare Score, we've created this idea of like, we've drawn a lot of these analogies between personal health and WordPress website health. And we want SiteCare Score to become a personal trainer for your website. So basically the idea is it's going to continue to issue spot, give you feedback, tell you what needs to improve, and it's going to track your progress over time the same way that a personal trainer would. We're continuing to add features and grow that, so I'm really excited about where that's headed. Right now, it's very much an awareness tool, but it's going to become an actual utility that you can use, right? Where you can say, if it says, for example, hey, you have too many inactive themes on your WordPress site, you have some open attack vectors, we can say, yeah, not only did we identify the issue, click this button and we'll resolve it too. So that's kind of the trajectory for what we're doing there, and that's really exciting. The other thing is Core Web Vitals. Like I said, it's a technical problem. We've been spending almost 2 years on at this point, and we're getting we've made some great improvements around how to improve the performance and usability of websites across the board. And but we're looking, we're closer to some solutions for how to conquer some of those gnarly edge cases that exist with any of these types of problems, with our managed services. So I'm really excited about where we're headed with that as well.
Excellent. Thank you. By the way, everybody, it'll be in the show notes afterwards, but I put it in the chat there. You can go look at the free plugin. He mentioned SiteCare Score and download. In fact, Ryan, as you were talking, people were installing on their site and using it and asking questions. So and
But nice.
Ryan, got through the presentation because he wanted to be here for the Q&A, and I so much appreciate him for that. So let me go down here. So Andy asked, do you recommend running site health checks in a test environment before moving to production or live? Or is site health intended to report only on live sites?
I mean, it can work in both environments, right? And so it's one of the nice things about site health, and I don't know if this is exactly where the question was going, but we sometimes use it to um, result like to identify issues that may exist in one environment but not the other, right? So like maybe the WordPress site is the same in both places, but maybe you're using a local server, maybe you're using a local server or you're using a different web host or different web server configuration than your production site. And You can absolutely, there's no reason you can't run the site health scan on both. Absolutely you can, but it can be really useful to say, we ran into a really weird bug. Oh, look, we compared we took the clipboard from both of these sites, compared them against each other, and there are some differences in the environment that we didn't know about. And so it can be useful in that way. But there's no reason not to use the site health tool in any kind of like staging or testing environment.
And someone kind of asked earlier, you kind of mentioned some of this, but when you're going down the site score and you say should be improved, Harley says, does that statement mean it's a suggestion of actions need to be improved or stating someone, oh, that's already improved? But when you're weighing those, like for instance, you had the public preview plugin, you know, that's where it gives you enough information, right, to kind of investigate and make some decisions.
Exactly right. And that's kind of the intention of any of these tools, right? Is there's an awareness component of it, right? Like it's to say, hey, something's not quite right here. And so dig in and investigate a little bit further. It's not, I definitely wouldn't take results from the site care score or any of these tools to mean, oh, absolutely, this is yeah, you can see like the technological categoriz I don't know that word
Yep.
classification
Yep.
of those pieces is off because like I think I pointed out in the with the site health tool there was something that says, oh, this is a recommended improvement, but if you're the CEO and you're selling subscription boxes, that little recommended improvement just killed your business,
Hmm.
right? So yeah, some of this stuff is going to need some additional translation and details to get to the bottom of it, but the intention of the tool is to kind of, point out that there's something that's not quite right.
And so that's like if you have a great agency like sitecare.com is Ryan's agency where he's chief of staff there. Great to ask the agency if you're curious, but also your hosting provider, including A2. So
Absolutely.
asking some clarification on that. If you're unsure, always ask. And you got two resources there, the agency that might help be maintaining your site or your hosting provider. Um, okay, thanks for that. So she asks, I get a lot of issues with spam comments. Is it impacting my site health also?
Not necessarily. The way that spam, and it depends on the volume, right? Like we have seen if there's like genuinely a lot of spam, it can really hamper your database. So just think of every time a comment is being added to your website, that's making your database size grow. So we've had clients come in who literally had I'm not exaggerating when I say 2 million spam comments overnight, right? And so that took their database from a very manageable size to many, many gigabytes of spam. That is definitely a problem. Um, f- but it's not so much on the you like, so that's going to be it's more of a performance impact as it is as opposed to, you know, in things like it doesn't make you more vulnerable to things like malware, things like that. It's more of a resources allocation thing. So definitely best to kind of cut that spam off before it comes through, or delete it regularly.
So Nancy mentioned, you mentioned WordPress 6.7 dropped last night. And so she asked, what will happen to my site if I update to 6.7? But I wanted to flag it for you to say best practices around when new versions of software from WordPress to themes and plugins come out, best practices for that, because I think that's probably the answer to Nancy and others' question.
Yeah, and it's the thing that we all have a little bit of anxiety and fear around, right? Like, okay, if I click update and this doesn't go right, then what? Right? So, first thing, every single time you need to have a very reliable backup and restore process. So, and then you need to be able to run that whenever you want to. So, so if you have a reliable backup process, you can say, okay, I'm going to process this update, but before I do, before all these files under the hood change and maybe causes an issue that I don't anticipate, run a backup of the last working state of your site make sure that's totally done and completed. And then, but the part of the backup process that people don't always understand is the restore process. Because the restore process, if it's not streamlined, if it's not simplified, can be technically complex. And so it's one of those things where the thing I always call is having belt and suspenders, right? So you don't want your pants to fall down. So your backups are your belt, and then that's your kind of like lifeline, your safety, and your restore process is your suspenders, and both have to be working really well for you to have confidence in that update. The other thing you can do is there's lots of services if you haven't used a staging environment before or a testing environment, there's lots of like one-click staging types of environment that'll just make a whole copy of your website and put it on a temporary URL. And you can run the update on the temporary website and see how it looks and see if it works the way you expect it to. You can do it there, and that'll make it so people don't that'll make it so you can have confidence when you go to do the actual live update. So even if something does break on that temporary URL, it doesn't impact your visitors or your customers. You can kind of sort the issue out on the side before doing a live update. But even if you're using a staging environment, that pre-flight backup is always a really good idea.
Yeah, just to reiterate, if you're worried, that's the first inclination to take a backup of your site and make sure you can also restore it if something does break in any update. So just what Ryan was saying, make sure you've got a good backup of your complete site and the easy ability to restore that if something's broken. So thanks for that. Let's see here. Is it Babs asks, advisable to enable auto update for all your plugins?
The here's my the all part of that sentence is where I start to take issue, right?
Hmm.
So it's like when they say you're taking a quiz and they use words like never or always. Like
Hmm.
I I wouldn't recommend I wouldn't recommend turning on auto updates for all plugins. That said, there are some plugins that have an extremely good reputation and an extremely good track record of not introducing, not introducing issues. Um, some that come top of like some that come to mind are Gravity Forms, Akismet. That I mean, uh, there's many that just have a really solid track record. If you have so one, reputation is how I would evaluate that. The other is business impact. Like if your spam filtering doesn't work exactly the way you want it to for a day or two, is that going to be the end of the world? Probably not. If your shopping cart breaks, so am I going to turn on auto updates for WooCommerce? No. That's the type of update I'm always going to process in a testing environment because of the business impact, right? So that's how I would kind of think about it is if something did go wrong with this update, how would it impact my website? And if you're like, oh, it wouldn't be that big of a deal, toggle it on. But if it's the type of thing that's going to that you're not going to like to, live with the result, going back to the being with your kids at the park analogy, like if you don't want to be trying to debug a WordPress issue on a Sunday, then I would probably leave auto updates off and test that.
I think those two great points is if it's a trusted plugin, kind of, stable, a great example. I was thinking the same Gravity Forms. The team's very careful about how they do updates. And other bigger plugins that are maintained by full teams with backwards compatibility testing, all that. The second is that mission critical. I just want to repeat what Ryan has said. If you're running e-commerce, something that's very active in your site, be really, really careful about doing those updates without the things that he's talked about. Okay, so a couple people have actually asked, is SiteCare taking on clients? I think I know the answer, but I want to surface it up to you, and I've
All
shared
day,
this.
every day, all day, every day, all day,
So
every day.
So sitecare.com, if you're interested in what the great work that Ryan and team are doing over there, check out sitecare.com. We so much appreciate him being on here and answering all these questions. He's a great technical expert and a leader in our space. Um, okay, so Justin asked earlier, he was asking about scheduling of WP cron jobs. He said WordPress is a built-in scheduled cron job that can be disabled, and then the cron job can be scheduled on the hosting control panel. Ryan probably knows what I'm referring to, and I'm trying to find his previous question where he asked. Okay, I'm sorry, Justin. I've lost your full question here. If you want to repost it, I'll do that. Um, I'm looking through. If you have more questions for Ryan, post those. We get about 4 more minutes. Tools you'd suggest for optimizing cleaning database?
Yeah. So there's um, there's two that we well one there's two that we go to often. One's a little bit more technical you to use. There, there's a there's a management piece called WPCLI, which is a command line interface for WordPress. It has it has database optimization tools built into it. That's something we use, but you do need to have like a reasonable amount of technical background to be able to use those tools. But it does have just for anybody who's used WPCLI in the past, it does have some really nice database optimization features. Um, Another one is WP Optimize is more of a, it has a user interface that makes it a little bit easier to use and understand. And then another one is called AAA Option Optimizer. One of the big, especially when it comes to Core Web Vitals, one of the biggest places where we see database bloat having an impact on performance is within the options table specifically of WordPress. And AAA Option Optimizer is a plugin from Juice who is the original author of Yoast SEO. And that plugin does a really good job of identifying potential issues with the options table in WordPress and shrinking that and making it and optimizing it. So those are a couple that it could be useful.
I think probably the last question, but Justin helped me with the clarification. Would Ryan recommend disabling the built-in WP cron job to improve site speed and loading?
Yeah, I got it. So WordPress does have its own job scheduler built into WordPress itself. Um, the problem, what you can typically run into is the resource limits that are applied to the WordPress software itself also apply to that cron job, so to that job scheduler. So put another way, if I have 100, these are just made up numbers, but if I have 100 megabytes of RAM that I can allocate um, to WordPress, that WordPress site has to that those 100 megabytes have to make sure all my plugins are functioning properly, that my the performance of my site is where it should be, and then behind the scenes there's these background jobs that are also running. That same 100 megabytes has to power that job as well. And so if you can offload that to the host, for example, and run that job scheduler at the host level, it takes one job away from that 100 megabytes of resources that you have allocated, right? So it doesn't have to do as much. So that's a long way of saying, yes, if that can run at the server level without the usage, like, without the memory limits and restrictions of WordPress itself, it tends to be more reliable and can help execute longer jobs that have longer run times and that are a little bit more complex. So yeah, I would say that's a good practice.
Ryan Sullivan, thank you so much for being here, sharing your expertise and experience so broadly for us. I put in, by the way, Ryan's Twitter. I've put in his site care, or if you're interested in more of the services they do for website web owners, do it. Ryan and site care were one of the leaders, first pioneers in this space, of doing all this, keeping up health. And I admired what he's done over the years and continues to do. But Ryan, thank you for being here. A bunch of thank yous in the chat. I hope you get some on Twitter and everywhere else and some pings. But so much appreciate you coming today.
It was my pleasure, and really, like, if you do have if you have questions about any of this that you think of after the fact, I want to be a resource, so feel free to reach out, and happy to help out however I can.
Okay. Well, be sure and follow him and ping him. And then everything will be posted from this to our A2 YouTube channel and emailed to you afterwards. So you'll have the replay so you can kind of go back to some things and look at what Ryan was saying. And if you liked him, what you did, tell me so I can tell him we need you back. We need you back, Ryan. So
Very good.
thank you, Ryan. Thank you, everybody else, for being here and forward to seeing to the next A2 hosting show. Thanks all.
Very good. Thank you.